We're going live because it's Saturday. It's 7:10. If you've been waiting impatiently for us to get up and going, it's just because we're already drunk. It's 7:10, and this is Parenting Porcupines, Libertarian Moms. We're going to be talking tonight specifically about there's no rubric, and you can't grade us, which means you can't shame us. Bring it. All right, I was only kidding. Jessica and Melissa are not already drunk. This is the no rubric episode where we talk about how there is no rubric for being a parent. There's no grade card. There's nobody to tell us that you're doing it right. And so how did you know? So of course, I'm Casey out of Columbia. Jessica's up in the upstate, Melissa down in the low country. We are the Libertarian Moms of South Carolina. And we're talking tonight about wanting to be good parents. But how do you know? How do you know that you're being a good parent? Jessica, bump in here. What do you think? How do you know?
I think I measure my success as a mom on how adjusted my kids are, if they're well adjusted, if they're respectful and kind. And I think if my kids are those three things, I think I've done okay. Yeah.
If your kids are respectful and kind
and well adjusted.
Okay, I'll give you that. These are good measurements. What about you, Melissa? How do you measure your effectiveness as a mom?
My job is to raise a functioning member of society. So when they come back to me from other adults and I get, oh, your kids are, nice to be around. They're helpful. They're kind. Good. If they're teachers and their grandparents and the other adults they interact with give me good feedback, I'm like, okay, good. I'm doing something right. We're on the right path. They're not little jerks out in public.
All right. So
they actually do know how to act, even if they don't do it at home.
So now, while building our rubric, we have helpful, kind, well-functioning adults. Okay, yeah. I'm with you.
That's the goal.
So I think the reason this hits home with me is I have experience with parents who want their kids to be happy. And if their kids aren't happy, that is the judge, right? And so at that point, it's this desperation to make said children happy.
And I admit choice, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like
a lot of the time, it's a mindset. It's not an emotion. Like I'm happy all the time. Content is better than happy.
There's a great song by a band. Oh, what are they called? The Dead Poet Society, where the guy sings about I take pills so I'm happy all the time. Like you can put your kids on medication and make them happy all the time. That's 100% the way to game the system. If happy is your rubric, right? Or you could ask yourself, really, what does it take to be a good parent? And am I meeting the needs, right? So I think, like, of course, keeping Holly safe. We'll go with safety as the very first category. Like, is she safe? Not just from harm from other people, but is she safe in that the house is not going to catch on fire, right? There's nothing here she can swallow, like the little Mr. Yuck sign on the poisons and things like that. Like, we've kept Holly safe. And that's the first piece. I want to tell you guys a story about keeping Holly safe. We went out, she and I, one afternoon on a Saturday, and we went for pizza, and we were walking out of the pizza joint, and Mom had a beer or two. And we were just sort of teasing each other and pushing each other back and forth. And I hip checked her, and she's little. She's like 6 at the time. And she hits the concrete and scrapes her knee, right? Well, when she scrapes her, when I look at her, she's okay. She's not crying, but I help her stand up, and she scrapes her knee. She looks down, the knee starts to bleed, and she gets a little panicked about this. I'm like, all right, well, let's hop in the car. We'll drive home. And well, in the meantime, as we're driving home, it starts to bleed even more. And it's like, now it's like gushing blood out of her knee. And I hear her in the backseat of the car, trying to calm herself down. It's okay. It's just a scratch. You're going to be fine. She's like mentally talking herself off the ledge. And since then, when I tell this story, I'm like, it's not a gunshot wound, Holly. It's a strawberry. You're gonna be fine. But she had been so well protected up to that point that literally she's 6 or 7 years old, and that's the first time she had had a scratch on her knee. The first time she had broken skin and seen blood was at like age 7. I mean, my God, could I protect the child any better than the first? And again, in the backseat of the car, like it's a gunshot wound, like everything's gonna be fine. I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna survive this. Of course, you're gonna survive this. It's a fucking bloody knee. It's not a gunshot wound. But at the same time as I'm driving, I'm like, yay me, yay mom for not letting your kid. She hasn't had a single scratch till now. It's like having a new car and not getting a dent for 7 years.
And my 6-year-old is so beat up that I get nervous that someone at school is going to notice and call someone on us, because she is from tip of her toes to her neck, just bruises and scratches and welts and bumps, because she doesn't care. She has no fear. Right. Jump? Okay, jump. We'll see what happens. Like she runs full speed into things. She's walked into parked cars. I worry about her sometimes, but that's okay.
So that's a good point, though. Like, is the physical wound evidence of bad parenting, or is it simply my kid needs a helmet?
I've considered making some of the children wear helmets just to walk.
It's not always a bad idea. I've never been that mom who worries about them getting physically hurt. I mean, obviously, I don't want them to get hit by a car or anything serious like that. But, you know, if you fall and you scrape your knee, you fall and you bump your head, I feel like kids need those experiences because they learn like that's certain things are dangerous, and then they understand what pain is, where it comes from, and so things like that. So I've always been that mom who's like, okay, if you do this, you're probably going to be hurting, and if they do it anyway and they get hurt, I'm like, told you, sorry.
And I don't deal with blood. That's Dad's job. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is I don't remember trying to prevent Holly from being injured. Just for whatever reason, she had not yet been injured up till that point, right? Like at one point she fell when she was like 2 years old. She fell and she got like hand scrapes, you know what I mean? Like little scrapes on your hands. At one point she fell in daycare and she had one of her teeth knocked out. Like these kinds of regular rough and tumble things had happened to her, but she wasn't climbing trees. She wasn't riding bikes. She wasn't doing the kind of like the things you expect your kid is going to experience an injury on. And that brings me to something we talked a little bit about in our Slack channel, which is our experience as kids. What we think childhood is supposed to look like is our experience, but their experience is very different. And what are your thoughts on this? Like, how much of their experience do we think we are trying to model it after our own? And how much of it is like letting them be kids and do childhood the way childhood looks right now?
I've noticed a common theme among people our age, and that is this need to keep your kids busy. And that's something that I've never really understood, that you have to be on the go all the time, you know, that every Saturday you have to be at the trampoline park or Frankie's Fun Park or going to the movies or doing this thing or that thing or the other thing. I've never understood that. And growing up, my parents, that's not what we did. And maybe that's why, you know, I played outside. I went outside from the moment I woke up, came in for lunch, went back outside until the streetlights came on. And so, you know, my kids don't necessarily do that because it is a different time. Our neighborhood is not such that they can. There aren't other children that they can play with and that sort of thing. But to some extent, well, I do expect my children to entertain themselves. I'm not going to be their entertainment. I'm not here to make their childhood magical. They need to do that for themselves. And so I think in that way, I am very much the same kind of parent that my parents were. It's like, go outside and play with a stick. Go. Go throw rocks. I don't care.
No, I think you made two really good points, though, Jessica. The first one is that your kids are expected to create their own experience, right? And not just expected, because we talked about this last week. They're empowered to do that, right? They're empowered to have the freedom, the liberty to create their own experience, which is amazing. And then the second piece of that is, I'm not here to be your tour guide. I'm not your ship's guide here that's going to entertain you all the time. It's not my job necessarily to make sure that your childhood is magical and wonderful. Disney doesn't pay me. So to that extent, Melissa, you've got 3 kids. Do they help each other build their own experience, or
it depends on their moods. Sometimes they're screaming, sometimes they're getting along lovely. But yeah, on a daily basis, they're left up to figure it out, do something. Just don't hurt each other. That's my just stop screaming, stop hurting each other.
In which case, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to move on to something else, but if you have a question about that.
Well, I was just going to say, in which case do you see yourself more as a facilitator, somebody who, like I said, does that? Here's the basics. I keep you safe. I keep you fed. I keep you clothed. I make sure you do what you have to do, like go to school, right? Yeah. And beyond that,
I'm not the referee.
Is up to you.
Yeah, you can if they're fighting or something. I have some kids that are like, "Oh, mom, she did this, he did that." Like, no, figure it out. I will sit here and I will help you two learn to speak to each other and work through the problem. But I'm not here to say who hit who. You're the bad guy. This one's innocent, because they're not. They egg each other on. They're big. It's all just a mess sometimes. But
is that consistent with how your parents worked through your scenarios? Like, are you modeling the same?
I don't know, because I don't remember ever fighting with my sister like this, because we weren't allowed to. It wouldn't even cross my mind to smack my sister or to scream at my sister, because it wasn't allowed. How my parents got us to realize we're not allowed to do this, I don't know. It was magic. I don't understand, but I was not allowed to fight with my sister.
Oh God, my brother and I used to beat the shit out of each other.
No. Oh my God, no. We would. No. That's unacceptable, and I don't know why we wouldn't, but no, we were not allowed to fight. No.
I don't remember.
We had heated discussions, but there was no yelling. There was no physical pushing. No.
Oh, we would fight. My sisters and I would fight, and we would fight to the point that when my mom told us to stop fighting, it would become whisper fighting. Like, I told you. Stop. I mean, like it would be like fighting under the radar, so mom couldn't figure out that's what was happening. And then we had another friend who, when he and his brother used to fight, their punishment by their dad was that they had to hug each other on the sidewalk in front of oncoming traffic. So every time a car would come by, their dad would be like, "Boys, a car's coming. Better get those arms around each other." And they had to hug each other as the car went by.
So public embarrassment. I love it.
Yes, exactly. So these are the kind, when we think about there's no rubric, we're following the models that our parents set for us, right?
They say we liked this, so we're going to do that. This was the worst, so we're not doing that.
So we're not going to do that, right? And I wonder, though, because we have a whole group of would-be parents now in Generation Z and the millennials who are growing up in an era where they were given very tight controls that said, hey, this is exactly how you're doing it right. And everybody seems to be right now sort of desperate to be told they're doing it right. So what do you think, Jessica? Do you feel like if your friends give you some kind of reinforcement to that, or your parents, like, is there a sense of pride around being a so-called good mom?
Yes, of course. It's always good to hear when people think you're doing things right. It's always good to have positive feedback. And so, especially from people that you care about and people that you respect. And so, whenever my parents or my grandparents or aunts and uncles or close friends or even just acquaintances who meet my kids, when people tell me what good kids they are, or how impressed they are, or whatever that is, of course it feels good. And of course it's reassuring that I've done something right, you know?
Yes,
One of our
but that also comes with a grain of salt because like y'all see me at my best with my kids usually. They're like, "Oh, your kids are so nice." I'm like, you don't see me when I'm screaming and then crying because I screamed at my children and now I feel like an asshole for a day and a half. So they see how my children act in public. But yeah, so no one knows all the stuff is all I'm saying. So
no, that's true. Nobody has visibility to the full spectrum of it, right?
it's a roller coaster. Woo-hoo.
Jessica,
It's
one
fun.
of our viewers wants to know if you are older or younger than your brother. And I think that question comes from before when you said you guys beat the shit out of each other.
I'm older. We didn't. Now, when we were little, we didn't. And but when we were entering the teenage years, that's when we would, like, it was nothing for me to get him in the headlock and body slam him. Like, and he would do the same to me. But nobody else could do it. Only I could do it. Because if
Right.
you messed with my brother, but yeah, I'm older. I'm the older.
That's the privilege of being the sibling.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't touch him.
When you guys think about your parents as role models, and I know that some of them are watching and or going to watch. My parents won't watch because they don't give a rat's ass about anything I do ever, even now. But there's a beautiful sort of ignorance as far as that's concerned. It's like, oh, that's lovely, dear. ... But anyway, but assuming that you're comfortable with admitting this, do you think of your parents as having been role models, clear role models for you as a parent when you became a parent? Melissa?
Absolutely. I think, they raised me, so I think they did a wonderful job. But, bias. No, I think I do a lot of the same stuff that my parents did. Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job. No one's perfect, but I do quote them a lot. I find myself saying things to my children that my parents, my dad has a couple taglines that are, if they don't want to be your friend, fuck them. You're better off without them. It's their loss. That was my dad's philosophy. Yeah. It's their loss. Fuck them. Find new friends. There's enough people out there. Who cares what these idiots think?
Oh, so, I'm that way too. Like I can hear myself sounding like my dad, and even Charlie will say, like, "Okay, Larry," like pat me on the head. Like, you sound exactly like your dad right now. Like, yeah, I get it. I hear that sound just like him. Jessica, what do you think? Do you think your parents gave you that example of like, this is who I want to be, or the vice versa? Like, this is not who I want to be?
Yes.
Both. A little bit of both.
A little bit of both. My mom and dad divorced when I was 14, and I lived with my dad. And so, one of the things that I value about the way that he raised me, from that point forward, because he was doing it, by himself. I say by himself. Our family was our village, and he had two brothers, and they had wives. We had my grandparents. So it really was a village. But I think the thing that I value the most about how he raised me as a teenage girl was that he always gave me freedom to make my own choices. But we always talked about those choices. We talked about who my friends were. We talked about the activities that I was going to be participating in, if I was going to parties or, whatever the thing was. And I always knew that my dad respected me because of those conversations. And he trusted me. He gave me that freedom because he trusted me. And I never wanted to lose that. I never wanted to lose that respect. I never wanted to lose that trust. And so we had a very, very, very close relationship. I mean, when I was 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, my dad was not just my dad. He was my best friend. And so the way that he handled that in this really difficult time as a single dad of a teenage girl, I've always valued that. Right. Even when we've disagreed on things, even when we've had arguments where we haven't spoken to each other for, a month while we cool down. But that experience and that parenting example is something that I really want with my kids, because I know how important it was to me, right, even as a teenager. So
walking that line between not friend, but someone you can confide in and trust,
right,
and the guidance from a parent.
Because we talked about that a couple weeks ago when we did our Meanest Mom on the Block, right? Where it was, I'm not doing these things because I want to be liked. I'm doing these things because it's the right thing for my kid. And the flip of that, like, I'm not doing these things simply because I'm a mean witch of a woman. I'm doing these things because it's important that there are boundaries set between us and these other children in our neighborhood, right? So when I think about that, the vision for the kind of parent I want to be, it was less about me. Like, that vision was less about what kind of mom do I want to be? And it was more about, what do I want Holly to get out of me? How can she
what kind of adult am I raising?
Yeah, the very best experience for Holly. What kind of adult do I have to be in her life to give her the very best experience? And it was never about like, oh, I'm Holly's mom, look how amazing I am. It was always about, what can I do to push Holly to where she needs to be and make her successful and make her confident and give her the ability to make the right choices and make her a functioning adult in the world. And all of that has always been me subjugated to Holly, what's interesting to me about this is, like, most of the time when we talk to other moms, they think of themselves as putting their kids first. And yet sometimes that judgment, that rubric, that are you a good mom bullshit that comes through.
Of course I am. Like they're at gymnastics 3 nights a week, and they do baseball, and they speak
like
3 languages. And
they speak 3 languages.
You think that's what parents are supposed to do? Like my kids, I'd be exhausted if my parents did that.
By extension.
Yeah. Yes. Look at my child do all this stuff. So that means I'm awesome. Yep.
So you know these people too.
We all know these people.
They're not just up in the Midlands.
No. No. And don't get me wrong, we did a lot of stuff growing up, but that's because we wanted to. My sister and I were just bananas, and we were on 4 sports teams. But my parents never said, you have to do anything. We got to choose what we want. We were lucky they let us do so much. But my mom would have preferred we didn't half the time. When I got my driver's license, was the happiest day of her life, because she could stop schlepping me all over town. I could take myself to my own practices, and my sister. So she was very happy.
Well, but so that brings to the idea of these show moms, right? The backstage moms, the ones who are putting their kids into pageants and stuff like that. And Jessica and I, we were at the Libertarian National Convention down in May. We saw they were having a little, like,
they were having a huge pageant,
young pageant or whatever. and we were super judgy about these women. Like, I'm not even going to deny that I wasn't. Like, I fully thought, why would you do this to your daughter? Why would you put her in a doll's gown and push her out
a
on
child
stage?
who would do that in a heartbeat.
That would have loved it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I have one child. All she wants is to be on stage. Like, she wants to be front and center on stage all the time. The other one like throws up if you look at her. But like, don't look at me. But the other one she is the star of the world. So she would love that. But I'm not paying all that freaking money. That's crazy. She's sick. I'll pay for your college instead. But
I wonder about that though. Like, I wonder about these parents and we've heard it from sports parents too, where, the dad didn't make it in college baseball or whatever. And so he's pushing the kid to be a good baseball player or insert sport here, right? Like, that kind of concept to me, like, how much self-awareness do you need to know that what you're pushing is your own objectives versus the kid's objectives? Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I mean, Jessica, so Jackson plays baseball. The engagement that he's had with his sports team and his coaching and all that sort of thing, has that always been Jackson driven? Or do you guys hold him to, hey, you made a commitment? Or is it like, we believe he's talented and we're going to push him until, he loses his mind?
A little bit of all of it. So Jackson started playing baseball when he was 7, I think. But he was really good and he enjoyed it. And it wasn't that we took the position that you have to be the best. You have to be the best. It was, we want you to be as good as you want to be. And so if you want to hit the ball better, we will get you a batting coach. If you want to be competitive, we will find you a tournament ball team. And so it was driven by him. It was all driven by him. But as long as he was willing to make the commitment and make the investment, show up to practice, do his best, we were going to give him all the resources he needed to be as good as he wanted to be.
Yeah, we'll make that commitment with you. Yeah.
Right. And he didn't start playing competitively at that young age. He didn't start playing competitively until he was 9 or 10, but he loved it. Like, he lived for it. And then actually what made him not want to really play anymore, his batting coach passed away unexpectedly. And so it just really he had a hard time. And then he was playing on a tournament team and there were some parents at the ball field. He was catching. He played catcher. He played pretty much every position on the field, but his primary position was catcher. And they were like heckling him. He was 11. He was just turned 11.
You want to watch me get arrested?
They were like, they were going at it. And of course he wasn't going to turn around and say anything because he was like, they're adults and I'm a kid. I have to be respectful.
Right.
But after that, he was like, Mom, I'm going to finish and then I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. I need a break. And we were like, okay. And that's that. So yeah, a little bit of all three, I guess.
Yeah. See, I'm still waiting for my kids to find something they like that much.
Yeah,
they have to do something. I don't care what they do, but you have to have preferably a physical outlet, a sport. Yeah. Pick any sport. I don't care. They do troop meetings. I was just camping for 3 days with the American Heritage Girls troop. My son decided he didn't like his troop meetings anymore. He did it for 2 years. So I told him, you have to talk to your troop leader and quit. I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. But so we let him quit, but he plays soccer. So he's got something.
Yeah. Well, you guys know I made college swim. Until she can find another sport that she's interested in, like swimming is a thing. And I'm getting a lot of pushback from a lot of different directions on it because she's very unhappy about it. But I noticed that the unhappiness with swim is the same unhappiness that she has when I push down on her about schoolwork. So it's like, it's just
No,
the
it's
thing you
12-year-old
don't wanna do.
unhappiness. That's all
Yeah,
it is.
like it's just preteen.
Preteen
I
crap.
don't want to do what I want. So let's talk about this as we get to the end of the episode about the LP, about being a libertarian. So did being an LP member and being surrounded by other LP members, did that influence your parenting style? And I'm going to say this from my perspective. I thought what I was doing was maybe a little weird because it wasn't like what my friends and neighbors were doing. But then once I got into the LP and like met you guys, I was like, that it's not true. Like when we have this, when we have this common understanding of liberty and a common understanding of autonomy and a recognition of other individuals' rights to make choices for themselves, and when we extend that to our children, that feels like a natural thing for me, for you guys. Like, and so I feel better supported. Like, even in our conversation about the meanest mom in the neighborhood, where I was like, my God, I might be fucking this all up because I don't have any rules. If you haven't seen that, you guys, people who are watching right now, you need to go back
Casey's a
and watch
marshmallow.
the meanest mom in the neighborhood, because I am apparently a total marshmallow. But yeah, like, but I think once we started talking about like, what is our philosophy? How do we come at this? It wasn't the Libertarian Party necessarily. It was meeting other like-minded individuals who are raising their children in the same way. So Jessica, you're nodding. Did you feel the same way when you came to the LP?
Not immediately, because my involvement started at the local level. So my involvement started at the county level, and at the county level, there aren't many parents with kids. Like there's one couple that have a baby and they have a daughter who's Jackson's age. There's another guy who's got a few kids at different ages, but we didn't really see each other beyond the meetings and things like that. And so I think it wasn't really until we went to convention and the three of us were able to spend some time together. And Casey and I spent a lot of time together because we rode in the car and we were roommates for the weekend. But, you know, I think that was the point when I realized that there are like-minded people. There are people out there who are teaching their children similar values and similar perspectives, and, you know, not just giving them what they want, or, you know, they're teaching them and they're talking to them and they're holding them accountable, and all of these discussions that we've already had. You know, there are other people like me, because I get a lot of criticism. I get a lot, because again, if you haven't watched it, go watch The Meanest Mom, because guys, I'm the meanest mom. It's already been established. But I get a lot of criticism because people think I'm too hard on my kids, and sometimes I may be, but you know, I think these things are important, and knowing other people who think these things are important, even if they teach their kids these things in a different way, they're still important. And so knowing that there are other people who think those same things are important, it's nice.
Raising two boys versus raising a single girl, very different dynamics. Having
Very
boys
different
and girls,
dynamics. Yeah.
very different dynamics.
Yeah.
So boys need a stronger hand sometimes because they're all crazy.
Well, I'm very strong.
As a matter of fact, in our state party meeting today, our state chair Sean and I were talking about.
Sean is Alex's husband, y'all.
So
I don't know if they know that.
Sean said, I've learned that if you want something done, you ask a woman to do it.
That's what he said. Like, that's what he said to me to get me to agree to chair the membership committee.
That's the conversation that started this, was me being like, how did you get Jessica to get on the committee? And he was like, well, I've learned that if you want something done, you ask a woman to do it. And I said, let me tell you something, Sean. There is a history of men choosing their club over their family. And the reason they did that was because they wanted to abdicate the responsibilities. They didn't want to be in the dirty, in the muck. They didn't want to be in the how. They didn't want to be refereeing. They didn't want to be part of the experience. So that's a history of men. When we think about men going to their club, going to their whatever it was, so they didn't have to be part of this, right? When we go to play golf, when my husband would go to play golf, people look at him like he's crazy. Why did you bring your wife with you?
Because I love my wife. We have fun together.
Because he's a good man. That's exactly right. These other men are saying, like, we're here to escape our family. The whole purpose of being on the golf course is so that our family doesn't know that we're indisposed for 4 hours. And I think there's a history of that where we watch men sort of step out and away. And the LP, our party, the Libertarian Party, has been that place where some men have come to be part of it, right? To be part of something, but to not have to do the work of what's happening at home. And when we hold them to this work, like, hey, there's work to be done in the party. When we look at it, the people who are actually doing the work in the party are the women. And it's because we expect it. Like, we know there's work to be done. We're going to have to step up and do it, right? And so it was interesting to me for our state chair to be like, yeah, I'm not surprised that the women are doing this. I'm like, I'm surprised that you haven't said to the men, get your shit together. This is how the work is done. And you need to do the work. Like, what I want to hear now at this next stage is, and I think, and this is to pull it back to our parenting conversation, like, we're seeing a new generation of dads that want to be more fully engaged, that want to be part of this parental participation, right? Like, they want to be actively involved. They want their kids to know who they are. They want to have that role in the family. And so this concept now of, like, are you a good mom? It starts to sort of pull back into the, like, as a family unit, how do you function? And that's the question I really wish we were talking about. I don't want to hear, are you a good mom? Because that's, I mean, everybody's got their own judgment, their own rubric, their own bullshit and baggage that goes with that. What I want to hear is your family unit functioning in a way that is turning out individuals who will be contributors to society? Or is your family unit so broken and dysfunctional that maybe you could use an intervention, right?
I gotta say, I gotta brag on my husband for a minute. My grandmother thinks my husband is like the best person on the face of the earth. When we had kids in diapers, he did diaper change. He does bedtime. He cooks dinner. Like, blew my grandmother's mind, because her generation, she went to work all day, got home, and my grandfather would look at her and say, "What's for dinner?" She's like, "I don't know. I just walked in the door. You've been home all day. What's for dinner?" Yeah. But he wouldn't know how to feed himself if he was dying of starvation.
Yeah.
So she thinks my husband's pretty cool.
Oh,
he's okay.
My mother said the same thing about the partnership that Charlie and I have. She's like, I was blown away. I came to your house and Charlie cooked and you cleaned up. And then the next night you cooked and Charlie cleaned up. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because my whole life I have cooked and cleaned up. And I'm like, yeah, that's not how partnership works. Like, somebody sold you a bill of goods.
Yeah. Well, I travel. I mean, I travel for work a good bit. And a few years ago, I actually had to go to India, and I was there for 2 weeks. India, not Indiana, India. Like, halfway across the world.
I got to go to Tennessee for a week. Yay.
Before I left, when I was getting ready, one of the members of my husband's family asked me,
who's going to take care of the kids? Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Their father, that whole other parental unit that is in my home,
That adult over there.
Of course, my husband's like, of course I'm going to do it. Like, she has to go for her job. I mean, this is because he has to travel too sometimes, but and then I get a lot of that. Like, who's gonna
Yeah,
take
they
care
do.
of
Charluch said stay-at-home dads rule. My husband would be, there's days he's not so keen on the idea, but he would be a stay-at-home dad in a minute, but he makes it's not significantly more than me anymore, but
look, that question comes
makes
from my
most of the money.
daughter she saw it on Reddit. And apparently the Reddit question was, if your wife made $12 million a year, would you stay at home? And the idea was,
why would
she
you
asked
not?
me that. She goes, if you made $12 million a year, would dad stay at home? I was like, are you kidding? If I made 200 grand a year, your dad would stay at home.
Yes. All you need to do is cover the spread.
Our household expenses, your dad would stay home. I was like,
yeah, my husband too.
Yeah, like he's not in a career that is his passion. He's in a career that is his job, right? And he does it and he likes it and he's happy with it, but it's not the same as being in your
my
passion.
driving force for living. Yeah.
So if he didn't have to work, of course he wouldn't work. Of course he would do something that he's more passionate about. He would care for Holly. He would care for our home and our family. He would love to. I think he would love to do that. That's just not our financial reality, right? So when we get back to this concept, this idea of this rubric, and are you a good mom? Are you a good dad? There's a lot of judgment that comes out of that, right? Where we look at other people and we say, who's doing it right and who's doing it wrong? And I want to hope that you guys are like me, where I'm like, I don't have time to give a damn about anybody else's parenting. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm like, you do you. Like, you just, you know what? Until the kids come over to the house and start interacting with Holly, at which point I'm like, what's happening here that might be disruptive to
if your kids come to my house and they're an asshole, I'm gonna judge you. Especially the younger the kid, the more judgment is on the parents because it's a little kid.
Yeah.
Like, if your kid's an asshole, this reflects on you because.
Yeah, and what do you do about it? I mean, do you say something to the parent? Do you just not invite the kid over again? Like, how passive aggressive or aggressive do we need to be about this? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
We've been lucky.
I have no answer for that.
We haven't experienced that too much. We really haven't. I mean, it's been that the kids that are undesirable, I should say, Holly weeds them out. Like, she stops spending time with them because she doesn't want to be around them. So I haven't had to say to the parent, your kid's not welcome here, because Holly has said, like, this isn't the right person for me. But that may not last.
And not everybody's for everybody. That's fine. But
yeah. And they have a right. And they have a right to be assholes. Like, that's the other thing I keep telling Holly. I'm like, they have a right to be assholes. Just because they don't believe what you believe doesn't make them bad people. They have a right to believe whatever it is they want. And you decide whether you want to tolerate that and experience that, or whether you want to say, you're not for me. We're not going to spend time together. I don't know. We're at 43 minutes. We've wandered longer than we normally do. We have definitely wandered away from our rubric conversation. But Jessica did a really good job in the notes of, like, trying to add in some of the things we've had to say about it. So
it's like, I mean, people are rambling. I'm just gonna type stuff.
What are we saying here? What are we
do? What are we really trying to say? We have in the past had a very scripted conversation, and tonight we were like, we'll just wing this a little bit. And I don't know, sometimes it goes on longer than it needed to. So we have a couple of things coming up. We know we want to talk about grief and how your kids deal with grief. We know we want to talk about, there was another one that we talked about last week that we said might come up this week. So there's a couple of different things. Oh, consent is the other one. We have a series. Yeah, we have a series called Boys Will Be Boys. So one of those two things is going to happen next week. But we want to say thank you to all of you who've been watching and hanging out with us and participating with us tonight. You have left comments, and we've been commenting back in Facebook. So we appreciate you doing that. And also on YouTube. So our YouTube comment factory has been working this time around too, which is super cool. We are the Libertarian Moms. Goodbye, Jess. Goodbye, Melissa. We'll
Bye,
see you next time.
guys.
Bye, y'all.